Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marisa Violante from OSPI. We are here at the Kingston Exchange Hub presenting How to Sell Yourself in the Professional World, the Art of Strategic Self-Promotion. Just a couple of housekeeping items. In regards to Zoom, you can ask questions verbally, raise your hand, unmute yourself, turn on your camera, optional, ask your question and comment. Also, via chat box, you can ask a question to everyone, or you can ask the question to me. And now I'll pass it on to Angela.
Thank you, Marissa. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to OSPI's Kingston Exchange Hub virtual session, How to Sell Yourself in the Professional World, the Art of Strategic Self-Promotion. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you today. My name is Angela Voitila. I use pronouns she and her. Today, I am wearing a white blouse and have blonde hair, straight shoulder, length hair. I am a professional engineer and an enterprise channel manager at Microsoft. I am also the chair of OSPI's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force and co-lead Women at Microsoft Canada. The OSPI Exchange Hubs expand their reach across Ontario by providing community gathering points for OSPI members to share, discuss, and contribute to OSPI initiatives, advocacy, professional development, and more. OSPI's Kingston Exchange Hub organizes panel event, which features an all-female panel that will touch upon understanding your worth, taking risks, and asking for a raise or a promotion. Please note, this session is being recorded. Please ensure you mute yourselves and turn off your video to help spotlight our panelists. Questions will be reserved for the end of the panel discussion, but we will try to keep an eye open on the chat window just to make sure that we capture all the questions. If you would like the question directed at a specific panelist, please write the name of the panelist before your question. Marissa from OSPI will be monitoring the chat box if there are any questions. So before we begin, we would just like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are coming to you from Toronto, which is in the dish with one spoon territory. We respectfully acknowledge the past and present traditional stewards of the land and their unique role in the life of the region. Toronto is on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play in this territory. Without further delay, we would now like to begin the session. I want to give the panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves and provide an example of how we can self-promote. We will start with Brenda, followed by Suzanne, and then Karen. Over to you, Brenda.
Thanks, Angela, and it's really wonderful to meet everyone today. My name is Brenda Katwesije. I am the co-founder and CEO of Wazi. Wazi is a company that's based in Uganda, and it's East Africa's first manufacturer of inclusive eyewear. So we know that eyewear in Africa is not nearly inclusive, so we are making good eyewear that can fit on most Africans' faces. And the other thing is that I am a graduate of the Smith MBA class of 2022, and at that I was the director of social impact at the Women in Leadership Club. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Angela and OSP, for the opportunity.
All right, well, I'll hop in next. That's awesome, Brenda. Very impressive. My name is Susan Hollett, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you all this evening to discuss one of my favorite topics, which of course is self-promotion. As the recent person in charge of the WINSET Leadership Program, I've been researching and teaching self-promotion for probably about a decade now. WINSET, that's the Canadian Centre for Women in Science, Engineering, Trades and Technology. We consider it a key communication skill and an important leadership attribute, like it truly is. Some of the most rewarding work that I do is helping people change their outlook on self-promotion. Typically, they come in with an outlook of dread and fear to anticipation of where's my next opportunity. So I'm hoping we're going to have some of those transformations here this evening as well. And my questions for them, and these may resonate with you, typically are, what are you afraid will happen when you do self-promote? And what do you think happens when you do not? And if you want to learn more about Winset and the leadership program, you can check out the website at winset.ca. And I'll pop that in the chat. And we have a 90-minute session exclusively on self-promotion.
That's great. So I'm the last one here. I'm Karen. I am a mechanical engineer. I graduated from Western a little over 20 years ago, and my career has taken me through sales engineering, government relations and lobbying, and now technology consulting, and now I'm an agile coach and consultant. I am a project executive, an executive member here of our Toronto office here in Adaptivate. I also do a lot of volunteer work and board work. So as an ambassador and as a representative of various organizations, selflessly promoting those organizations, including OSPI, of which I am past president and chair. I think for me, my advice around, or my approach towards self-promotion, because it's hard to talk about yourself, don't think about it as bragging. Think about it, why is this person lucky to be talking to me? Like, why are they lucky to have me? And that's sort of been my approach in my own head. So when I talk to people about whatever that is, the solution they're working on, particularly in consulting, why am I the right person to answer that question for them? So that would be my approach. So Angela, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for your introductions. Now that we are all well acquainted, let's begin with our first question. So this is open to all our panelists. I'm going to ask Brenda to answer first, please. What does self-promotion mean to you?
For me, self-promotion really means being able to be memorable, right? So that every time that you meet somebody and you tell your story and you introduce yourself, they need to remember when you leave the room, right? And they should be able to also advocate for what you promoted once you're gone. So for me, I look at the approach as, how do you tell your story? How can people resonate with you and actually see that you can provide value to them, or that there's a beneficial relationship there. So that's how I perceive self-promotion.
Karen or Susan, want to?
Yeah, so I'm going to build directly because Brenda read my notes, obviously. Because I mean, it's very much just telling your story, and it ties very much with being authentic to who you are, because you have to tell your story, not the story of people around you or people you think you'd like to be like, or other people you think are successful. And no one knows your story like you do. And you want them to know it. Like Brenda says, you want them to walk away remembering, oh, yes, that's Susan Hollett with the Winset Center. I'm going to call her next time. But the flip side of that is you can't expect other people to be asking you for your story, right? So people think, well, if they're interested, they'd ask. And we sort of dismiss it. People are very busy. Bosses are very busy. People in strategic positions are very busy. You need to take any opportunity you have to give them a snippet of your story, enough that they'll remember you when it comes up, whatever it is that you're promoting comes up, and they're like, oh, didn't I meet someone on that OSPI webinar that did self-promotion? So you need to not think people will have to pay attention to you. You're not the center of their attention. You're just a very, very small piece of their world. Karen, what do you add? Yeah.
So I agree. It's about it's connecting with your audience, right? Like when people talk about networking, and I'm going to talk about networking here, it's not just about like, hey, I'm Karen, you're Brenda, you're Susan, let's all be part of the network, let's connect on LinkedIn, and that's it. Think about it as building a relationship, right? So if you're at a career fair, if you're at a summit, if you're like in line at the grocery store, how do you connect with someone? How do you be ideally pleasantly memorable? Because at events like this, there are like lots and lots of people. When I was a hiring manager, I would meet lots and lots of people. But what I remember is like when I see a name and I remember I had a pleasant conversation with that person, I'm more likely to give that person an interview, right? The person who is unpleasantly memorable, say hogged the whole conversation, talked over people, was very rude, they're not going to, I'm going to remember that name too, but I'm not going to bring them in for an interview. So be pleasant, be pleasantly memorable, so that if they were to see your name cross through their LinkedIn request in their inbox, if you submit a resume, if you ask for an interview, they're like, oh yeah, Brenda, I think I heard you talk about inclusive eyewear. Okay, yeah. Susan, you talk about self-promotion. Okay, I know this person versus somebody I don't know. So that would be my voice. My thoughts around self-promotion.
Yeah, and then you're more likely to pass it on as well if someone's asking, because we all want to be known as, having a deep network or stewards of talent or whatever. So if someone came to you, Karen, and said, do you know anybody who knows anything about inclusive eyewear? You're like, no. And the only reason you know it is because Brenda shared it with you, right?
Yeah, I really like that. I think a great way, even Karen bringing up LinkedIn, I think before you go into an event, and if it is a hiring event, you want to maybe do some research in advance and see if there's any things that you can connect on, even from the school you went to or where you grew up or wherever it is. I think it's always a great natural way to start a conversation with someone. So
I had a great friend in university, and we would go out to these social events, and I would be, I claim it because I was a year younger, but I would be so interested in like the free food and the free drinks. She would have clipped out, this is in the old days when you clipped out newspaper clippings, and I'd go to her house before, and she would make me read the newspaper clippings about the people that were going to be in the room. And she then went on to become an incredibly successful person. And you could see it. I mean, she was 18 at the time, right?
It's all about making that personal connection. So
yeah.
You are having an interview with someone and you look them up on LinkedIn so you're prepared. You don't have to say in the conversation, oh, I saw that you went to Western. I went to Western too. You can just kind of drop in, oh, I did my undergrad at Western. And they'll be like, oh, I went to Western too. Like, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, you know that. So You find a way to build those moments of personal connection again, so that you can be pleasantly memorable.
Yeah. So, and what I was going to hop in just on that point. We get pushback at Winset because we work a lot with women that is manipulative, right? That is being, and sometimes the difference in being strategic and about how to build relationships and being manipulative, that you're like positioning yourself and there's something bad about that. Sometimes there's a real pushback against that. People don't like to do that, and they'll they won't do anything then, right? And it's a really fine line sometimes to talk to people about.
And that's their choice, right? You can't force people into doing something that doesn't feel natural or right.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, Brenda, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I actually I find this conversation so interesting, and both of you have brought out really well that sometimes to self-promote is not to self-promote too much, right? Like, you don't have to dominate the conversation to be memorable. Sometimes it's just as simple as being the one that asks the right questions, right? Because in that way you might be, it depends on what you want to promote. I may not necessarily want to promote my product, but I want to promote myself as a leader or as somebody that can actually be empathetic, understanding, a listener. So it's so many different facets that it's not just about what you do. It's more of who you are as a person, and that's what makes people want to be with you, want to remember you. And then, oh, by the way, what do you do? Oh, I do this and this. So now they want to work with you more because of your person and in addition to the amazing things that you're doing. So yeah, great conversation there.
And it's so important to have ready things to say, like, your little, you call it your elevator pitch or whatever, so that when you do go to the networking event, now that we're going to have networking events in person again, and someone says, so Brenda, what do you do? Tell me what you do. Tell me about yourself. And you have about 30 seconds before someone more interesting walks across their line of vision. And so you got to be ready for that 30 seconds, right? You have to be able to do it in a positive way that doesn't put yourself down. So some people put themselves down a little bit. So if someone says, oh, well, that's really interesting. Oh, well, it was nothing. Well, actually it was, right?
No, those are all great insights. Thank you. I'd like to pose the next question for Karen. I know that you've had a plethora of different roles. So what was your first job out of university or your first job ever?
So my first job when I graduated from engineering was actually as a sales and applications engineer, or engineering, because I didn't have my license then. I got the job because I had graduated looking for work. My dad, my mom, all our friends, my friends and family, they're like, "Oh, are you looking for a newly graduated engineer? My daughter just graduated." So one of my dad's coworkers' nephew was working at a company that was looking for an engineer, was looking for talent for their sales team. So it was just really like, Sean didn't know me. I knew Auntie Lola because I grew up, with her basically as a family friend, but I didn't know her nephew. But I sent my resume to my dad. He sent it to Auntie Lola. Auntie Lola sent it to Sean. He sent it over to the sales manager, and I got an interview. And I came in, and I was a sales engineer. And I think for me, it was timing and luck, right? Their sales engineer had just resigned. They needed to get someone in there to do knowledge transfer before he left in 2 weeks. For me, because it wasn't just that I was an engineering graduate. I think because I did a second degree in English as well. They're like, "Oh, she's articulate. Like she can write, things with proper grammar and wording and spell things properly." So they took a chance on me. My interview, it was a great interview, but also kind of a weird interview because it started off as an interview and then they started taking me around, introducing me to people. Like it ended up being 4 hours I spent in their office. And at the end of it, they're like, so when can you start? I'm like, so I think I got the job. And they're like, yes, can you start like tomorrow? I'm like, sure. So that was my first job. And how it relates to my job now, I am in consulting. I didn't intend to go into consulting when I graduated from school. I thought I would be an engineer like forever. However, what I've learned as I've gone through my career is that I like working with people. I like solving problems. So the sales part, like like the solution finding part of sales, I really enjoy. The sales part of sales, I don't really enjoy, but the working together with the client or the customer to figure out the technical solution to their problem is stuff that I really enjoy. So I think that was really helpful for me in my career to help identify what kind of path to go down. But when you're selling stuff, with time and experience, you learn to sell yourself, right? You start by selling a product. You can really advocate for a product. And if you think about yourself as that product to advocate for and highlight, it kind of helps make it easier to kind of step into that self-promotion kind of mindset. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, that's great. I think it's interesting because I remember one of my mentors actually recommended going into sales because no matter what role you're in, you're always selling. Even if you're managing a team, you have to sell to your team to drive them into a certain direction. So great experience. Brenda or Susan, would you like to go next?
So my first role was actually in audit. So I joined Deloitte straight out of, I did engineering and then I didn't do anything with that degree. I went straight into audit, mostly because I was in Uganda at the time and, the jobs were not easy to come by then. And so the first thing I did, I knew that the farms were coming during, just after we had finished our school. So they're on their own campus trying to recruit the best and brightest. So I believed I was the best and brightest. So I walked over to them, introduced myself, chatted with a few people there and made a few connections. And then when they opened the application process, my application went in fast, I guess. So ultimately, I think what set me apart, it was more of how I told my experience in engineering school, because they were quite agnostic on when it comes to backgrounds. It wasn't about finance and accounting. They were more like, okay, if you're an engineer, you kind of have the mindset, like Karen said, to solve problems. And that's what I actually led with. But before then, I did so much research about the farm, talked to people that had been there. So by the time I was telling my story, it was the right story to blend in with what they were looking for. So since then, I've actually learned to tell stories that way. Life is a pitch. I'm always pitching. So even now as an entrepreneur, I'm always figuring out, okay, what adds value here and how does my story match with this? And I'm always telling my story and telling the story of my journey, where it applies, of course, in the right spaces, but I'm always pitching something. So that's what I believe. Life's a pitch.
I love that so many professional schools now have started to incorporate self-promotion and pitching and having to sell, like, right, for a lot of engineering programs, the last year, there's a project and there's a pitch competition and the like, because it wasn't always that way with engineering, right? Engineers were the ones, in the back room doing the calculations and the like. So it really has, I think, given them the opportunity to shine and develop those skills. So it's not such a shock, Karen, when someone can speak and do math, right? My story is much more, I'm not an engineer. And so I did a master's degree and then went back and I knew where I wanted to work. I wanted to work at a technical institute. It was a technical training institute and it was a marine technical training institute. They taught fishermen and they were fishermen at the time. And so I wrote them a letter and they wrote me back a very nice letter, said, thank you very much. We currently don't have any openings, blah, 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 blah. But they left that one opening at the last line of the letter was, if you'd like to come in and discuss, your training and education with us at some future time, it was just a very polite tale. So I called and called and called and called, and I finally got an interview with the person I wanted to work with, the director of planning. And when I got in there, I sold my vision enough that I wanted to take everything I'd learned in this highfalutin master's degree and move it to a technical field that would help rural people working in the fishery. And he called me about a week later and gave me like a 3-month contract. And that turned into the beginning of my career. I was there for several years. And I learned there very much about, like Karen talks about, the art of promoting where you work, right? So I would promote, I knew, instinctively I knew, like, we had an event once and it was going to have all these heads of companies in. And the boss asked me to help organize it. And I was like, okay, so we have to make sure that we have, our star students and they know who's there and they're all identified and they're matched up and they're talking. So they're promoting themselves and the like. And I remember him going like, I was asking you about catering, but okay. Right. So you learn that, again, when it's all around you, you learn that instinctively. Being able to make the shift to how do you advocate for yourself or promote yourself is another step. It's a step, but it's another step to skills that you've already learned, in the workplace, being able to do that.
Thank you, Susan. I know for my first job, I actually started, this was even before university, but even working in the restaurant industry and serving. And I think that was always helpful in just learning how to even start a conversation with someone and getting over those nerves. So it's always helpful to just put yourself out there. So
I worked restaurants. I typed papers for people. I would do whatever, but waiting on tables is a very humbling experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think everyone talked about finding jobs after university. I know some people struggle really to find their first job at a university. So one of my questions is, how do you find work experience? Karen, do you want to kick this one off?
Sure. So when I talk to students and young graduates, new graduates who are worried about not having any work experience or paid work experience, I like to tell them that like experience is experience. It's okay if it wasn't paid, right? Like what you learn and how you bring that forward and how you then approach a problem that's coming to you. Does it matter? Like if you were, doing volunteer work, an organization, right? It's unpaid, it's high school, club, whatever it is, but you had to deal with conflict. how to deal with conflict is an important skill. No one's ever going to be perfect at it. It's something you're always going to experience and kind of, experience. And hopefully you get better at it over time, but nobody's predictable. Human nature isn't predictable. So that experience as a high school student or as a university student in a volunteer space, that's still valuable experience. Just because you weren't paid to do it doesn't mean it's not valuable. And if you have a job, if you're looking for an engineering job, but you don't have any engineering co-op or internship experience, it doesn't mean you're not qualified. Right? It's not just about the technical application of what you've done. If you've done, again, volunteer work, if you've done club work, if you've done a different job, if you were working in retail or working in restaurants, how did that help you prepare for dealing with conflicts, or handling money or high pressure situations or fast-paced environments? Look at the skill or look at the talent and kind of take the name out of it and take the industry out of it. What is the skill that you learn, and how can that be applied to what you're doing going forward? So that's what I would suggest. Like, be not creative in the sense like don't make things up, but don't feel that you are limited by work experience.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And because people would dismiss that as like, well, I only have volunteer experience. And put it down in a way when in actual fact, you can have some of the best experiences, training, networking opportunities from volunteer than you ever would as an intern or a co-op student. Sometimes when we talk about it, we suggest people, okay, look around, think about strategic relationships. Where are those people? And where do they volunteer? And are you interested in the same things they're interested in and volunteering there? It might be something like a case competition or a pitch competition, and you can help manage that with, logistic skills or to participate it. Or it could be on a board of, to volunteer on a board or a women in science and engineering kind of group, right? There's so many opportunities that are out there, right? Or, to do research or to volunteer as an intern, right? It's really, it's important to be strategic about where you're volunteering, not just because that's where all your friends volunteer or that's where you see other people volunteering, right? And I think people have figured out that what a lot of this boils down to is knowing yourself. Like, you truly do need to know yourself. What do you want? And once you know what you want, even if it's just like next step, it doesn't have to be the next 20 years, then, okay, so how am I going to get there? Who do I need to, who else is in that space, and how do I get to hang out with them? Right.
Yeah, that's a really valid point, because, opportunities for experience are among people. And I think all of us sharing our stories, you could see a pattern of somebody did this, somebody held my hand, somebody introduced me. So, but also one thing that I think is important is taking risks, in the sense that if you want the experience, there has to be a degree of risk and putting yourself out there and, letting the world know that you exist to start with, because sometimes we're kind of afraid. And I came to Canada to do my MBA, had never been to Canada, first time. I applied to Queen's, and genuinely, looking at the people in my country, not many people had gone through Queen's. Actually, when I did the math, it was I was the second Ugandan to do that MBA, and it was a bit. It was a big risk on my part. I didn't have tuition. I didn't have, I didn't have much, because as an entrepreneur, I didn't have much savings. But taking that risk, it kind of opened me up to even more opportunity for experience. So I then ended up serving on Women in Leadership Club. I ended up serving on Scale Up Summit, then ended up meeting so many different people that then opened up more opportunity for experience, right? So experience is about the kind of risk that you choose to take. And it may be professional, it may be in school, it may be you start a business and then you have a different kind of experience, which is wearing so many different hats and juggling everything, which is also really valuable. So I think for me, it has come down to taking risk, and that has opened me up to so many opportunities for experience. And I've learned a lot over the years.
I like that aspect, Brenda, around taking risk, and even just, I think an aspect of taking the risk of even just telling somebody in your network or even from your family, letting them know that this is something you're looking for. You never know. There could be someone in your family network that has opportunities. I know for me in university, I actually joined the formula team. So we built like a formula race car. It was volunteering, but that was something that a lot of my companies that when I was interviewing with them, they were very interested in just how we got that going. So I think anything really helps as long as there is some type of experience that you can leverage in your examples for your interviews. So moving on to the next question, what are your greatest strengths that you were able to sell to your interviewers? Let's start with Brenda.
Over time, I think they've changed over time, or I would say compounded. So initially, my first job, I was talking about problem solving and being able to simplify difficult tasks, right? So that then compounded into my ability to communicate, my ability to lead teams, but also my ability to work very well in difficult situations, especially when the house is on fire. I think I have that ability to kind of stay calm. So those are some of the things I've been able to articulate with real examples from my experience over the years that I think have kind of made me stand out in interviews and when I'm having conversations with people that I'm selling to. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
I jump on after Brenda. So mine has always been that sort of the calm in the crisis, the calm, when everyone else is losing it, then, I'm the one, okay, let's step back. Let's figure out what's really going on here. And so that's always been one of my strengths. And then also the ability to sort of to figure out what's really going on. So this is, what's under the surface, and to be strategic about how to address problems. So that's where I am now in my career. And Brenda says, and Brenda, yours is going to change again. And they do change as you acquire more experience and more wisdom. But those have always been my touchstones that I don't get too excited about stuff. Right. So that you just sort of stay calm. They made those T-shirts for me, right? Stay calm and carry on, or stay like all those. Yeah.
For me, I think in the beginning, earlier in my career, where like I was trying to sell my technical experience. So it's about, problem solving as an engineer, problem solving. It's about the ability to work in a fast-paced environment. It's if the job was for a lean specialist, I talk about my experience in lean and the accomplishments I was able to deliver using that framework. So it's not just about what you know, it's what you do with it. And so and people remember accomplishments more than just learning. More recently, I'm going to split this into two pieces. So I work in consulting now. I will say the last 3 jobs I've had, I didn't interview for. I got headhunted. So it was more like I didn't have to sell. It wasn't so much about me going and selling why I'm a good fit for this company. They had to sell me as to why I should leave where I was to go to them. So it's kind of interesting. It's nice to be in that position. However, because I do work with clients, there's building relationships there. And if we're on client case, how do I sell that I'm the right person or my company is the right company to be there to provide that consulting service to solve that problem for them? And so my approach there, when I'm particularly being put on a new client case, and I have to build those relationships with an organization that is being told that consultant is coming to help them. They don't really know me. They may not feel that they need my help from me. So how do I go in strong, but not like overbearing? So for me, it's about like being knowledgeable, being a good listener, really reflecting back what I'm hearing and trying to solve the problem. That's still the engineer in me. If your problem is, collaboration and people are in different time zones, well, here are some practical solutions that have worked in other places that we could try. This is a new concept we're trying to do. I try to break it down in a way that maybe, makes more sense given the context that they're working in. I try to like sell myself in terms of like the knowledge that I have and the ability to get things done. And that really comes through. So people tend to trust me. They'll come to me with more problems or other things that they're working on. And we built that. So
I think Karen identified a really interesting point. The ability to surface your values, like you talk about trust, right? So when I work with a team, I always make sure they know that, and it can be self-promotion. It's a way of them identifying me is that, I've got your back. So the one of the cultures of this team is going to be that we've got each other's back. I've got your back. No one gets thrown under the bus. And in a way, that's a way of self-promoting because again, they see that that's the authentic me, right? And they're like, okay, all right, good. We can go. I know I can trust Susan, right?
Yeah, no, I like all your examples, and I think it's always good to share not just your technical strengths, but I think it's, especially coming from engineering, we're very technical. It's also those soft skills that really we need to ensure we highlight to our interviewers as well. So next question, how important was your prior education and work experience to getting you to where you are today? Susan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So like Karen, I've had many positions and roles. I've actually been a consultant for many years. My work with the Winset Center has been over the last 13 years. And it was interesting how I got that because they started off as a project, a funded project from CC West. And they had 3 focus groups, one in the East, one in the West, and one in a summary one in Ottawa. And I facilitated the one in the East. They needed a facilitator. And so we did that and I did a great job, of course. And then I asked them, I said, well, who's facilitating the rest of them? They said, we'll have someone in the West, but we haven't done the one the big one, the one in Ottawa, right? With all the government people. And I'm like, well, I'm obviously your person for the, like I was, so when I look back on it now, I convinced them I had done such a great job in the Atlantic one and they just needed me to be in the Ottawa one. And they took me and I have been involved with them doing I just put my hand up for everything. It's like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I know that because I love this organization so much, and helping them to solve problems and they also, and I've also grown a lot in the position. And I look at it and we talk to people about nothing is a waste of time. Every step is a step forward. And whether the step ends up being a lesson learned, or if it ends up being a great success, it still builds part of who you are. So there's no sense to regret, right? That everything when you, or to describe something as a mistake or whatever, it's not a mistake. It's something you did and you learned your lesson from it. So even that, putting a positive spin on things is again a way of self-promoting because you're not putting yourself down like how stupid was I to do that kind of thing. But it's like, oh, okay, I tried that, learned I didn't like it, and won't be doing that again kind of thing, right?
I fully agree. Like I'm an agile coach and consultant, and we talk about failing fast and just trying, test, learn, adapt, and all that. So we're trying to reframe the conversation around failure and mistakes. It's lessons learned. I like to talk about it as like knowledge you didn't have before, right? So it didn't work, and that's okay. How many times do things work? 100% the first time, every time you do it. We all have a lifetime of things where it didn't work out that way. So this is normal. So I fully agree with that.
Yeah, but it's interesting to watch how some people will beat themselves up about it. Oh, I should have made the perfect decision. I should have done more research. I should not have done. And it's like, wait, what? Why? And then, just move on, right?
You need to work in a car plant because like on the production floor, there's problems happening all the time. And you had to, I was a frontline production engineer. So if there's 50 defects coming at me, I can't be like, okay, I need to fix the first one. And if I get through 10, maybe I can park the 40 for tomorrow. No, I have to get through. As soon as it came up, I had 15 minutes to triage and direct it to somewhere else. So you learn to make decisions based on what you know at the time. You can't know everything. You just got to do the best you can and kind of deal with new information as it comes up. So that really beat the perfection out of me, the need for perfect out of
And that would be a great pitch. So, for example, if Karen was in an interview or whatever, and they pointed at something on her resume and said, "Oh, well, that doesn't look overly positive. Can you tell me about that?" And when you can respond like that, when you can respond and say, "Well, look, this is what I've learned out of it. Yeah, it might not have been the traditional path, but this is what it gave to me." Right. So it's that positive spin on it, right?
And I think all of us are a product of so many different choices that we make along the way in our careers. So I think about my life and I'm like, if I had chosen this way, okay, maybe I would have ended up somewhere else or got different experience, but I think it would all have been valuable, right? So at the end of the day, it's important to also define, what does success in a career look like for you as a person, and what is it that you want to choose to focus on? So then as you make those pivotal decisions in your life, they kind of create the path towards the person that you want to be and where you want to go. So personally, I think my experience and my education, it has all kind of led me to where I am. And there's some people who took a similar path or didn't take the same path and ended up somewhere. And then I took a different path, ended up the same place. So there's so many different paths to the same thing. You just have to define what that thing looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the lesson here is really to try everything, because that's how you'll know what you really want to do. And I think so many people and so many of us put so much pressure on making that one decision. And I think it's more realizing that this is not the final answer. Like, there's always going to be more choices, and you can always adjust. So I think that's all great. Thank you. So for the next question, what challenges did you face and how did you overcome them? Brenda, do you want to go first?
So through my career, I think one of the things, and it's very interesting that we talk about self-promotion, because I haven't always actually known how to self-promote. I absolutely love, Karen, how you describe it in the beginning, that how can I be that person that is going to add value to you, right? So it's more like understanding it myself, that I'm great and that I can actually deliver what you want me to deliver. That belief in yourself, I haven't always had it. So it's the biggest challenge that I've had. And when you try to sell yourself or to sell something to someone, people don't really believe you all the time, right? So you start to doubt, and every time you hit a block, you doubt yourself. So that's one of the key challenges actually that I have had through my career, and I have intentionally decided to actually work on that. And even this for me is a learning experience. And not to say that just because I'm on this panel, I am the expert of self-promotion. No, I'm not. I think I can sell, but it's not always come easily for me. And it's always been a learning journey. So what we're discussing has been the same challenge I've had over the years. And I'm just happy also to be learning from you, Karen and Susan. So, yeah.
I can go next. So challenge. So yeah, that sort of like self-sabotage. I hate the term imposter syndrome now because it's a bit overused, but that is what it is. Like we tend to think we're not good enough, and then we sort of self-defeat, like we defeat ourselves. I think it's really important to have the right mindset and have that confidence in yourself. I know in your deep heart and brain, you're like, oh, I'm not the most qualified. But who you're talking to, you are the most qualified. Because if you don't believe it, the person you're talking to is not going to believe it either, right? So I think like having that mindset is really important. I think looking at things as an opportunity and not as a challenge is really helpful too. I know during one of the more difficult assignments when I was working in the plant, it was tough. Like people were yelling all the time. It was always dealing with problems. I felt down, and I became somebody who started looking for the worst. Oh, this person is not talented. This person makes mistakes all the time. They're they're stupid, right? Like, and I was just automatically jumping to the worst conclusion about a situation, and never, like, it just turned me into a really negative person. I had to really work hard to say, okay, this person is not deliberately stupid. They just don't know. So what can I do to help them know? Maybe they just don't know. Maybe this person's having a bad day and that's why they're like really cranky at me. Try and really be compassionate. Try to think the best of the situation and try and like deal with it that way. Because if you have that approach in your own self, that does reflect out when you talk to others and people can see it. So if you have a very negative mindset first, that comes through. If you have a very positive mindset first, that also comes through. So when you're dealing, so the other thing I would say is like looking at things as an opportunity. When I talk to my team and I'm trying to, think about opportunities for them, for their development and how they can continue to grow their careers, I go to them and say, hey, I need you to like run the offsite. Or I can say, hey, I need you to run the offsite. It's a really great opportunity to like get to know everyone in the team. You're going to lead this initiative. It's going to be, it's going to be really great. How you present it as like, oh, this is something we have to do. We have to do an offsite, and like, can you go like order food and book a room? Not very exciting, not really an opportunity. It sounds like work. But if it's an opportunity, I'm giving you this opportunity, or I'll be honest, a lot of times people come to me, hey, I need you to do this thing. I'm like, that sounds like work, not really fun. So if I'm going to do this, how am I going to spin this as an opportunity? You're asking me to, plan the offsite. I know that you want me to, do the catering and find the signs and all that. But how's this an opportunity for me? It is my opportunity to lead an initiative, to get to really know all the attendees, to really have direct relationships and meet the key stakeholders who are coming. This is an opportunity. So I think that's really important to kind of think about. And so if you start thinking about things as an opportunity, and then when you talk to interviewers, when you talk to people as you're building relationships, how do you sell or how do you spin your experience as opportunities? So I think that it all kind of runs in together, but the mindset comes first.
Yeah, absolutely. Good sales. With me, my biggest challenge is I'm an introvert, right? So complete introvert. So, and it's not that as any of you out there who are introverts know, it's not that I don't like other people. It's more challenging if I'm in like a networking situation or groups of large people. So I had to be very deliberate and thoughtful before I go into interactions. Like I have to know who I'm going to talk to, what I'm going to talk about, and I need to know those things. I need to have an exit plan that doesn't make people feel like I've just thrown them in the gutter or something, or that I don't, because I'll often come across as like intimidating or standoffish, and because I'm not all, oh my god, how are you, like that. Like I'm not that kind of social person. So where I go is so Brenda, I want to know about those glasses. What do you mean by inclusive? Like, tell me more. Like, so I'll go right to your idea. And if you're an ideas person, that's great. We're going to go off to the races. But if you're not such an idea person, and then I'll need to move on. So I've had to, throughout my entire life, have to navigate that. And again, it'll never go away. It's part of who I am, but you just learn to navigate around it. What about you, Angela? What's your challenge?
Oh man, that's a great question. There's always challenges. I think one way that I've navigated, even like there's challenges at work, I've always tried to keep a mentor in my life, either within the same organization that I work for, or even externally. I found even external mentors have helped me, I think, more than internal ones, just because they have a very different perspective. It's a very different just culture for them. Like they see it from an unbiased perspective. So they've been able to help me navigate just certain situations and complications, I would say, at work. So, no, and speaking of environments, how do you navigate the workplace culture? Susan, do you want to take this one?
Absolutely. So people who successfully navigate the workplace culture I've figured out from years of observation and research on this, they're very open, they're great listeners, and they're very inclusive. So, and they want to understand the formal and informal power networks at work. And WinSet has a full day session just on navigating politics. And we touch on that stuff, but it's so cool to see someone who's good at that. So it's not all about being, pushing people around or always pulling favors, but people who are good at workplace politics. They're able to give favors, but also to ask for favors. They're able to sponsor people, and they're also looking for sponsorship opportunities. And they look at their workplace, whether it's their team, their division, their department, the entire organization, as a living organism. Like, it's not just a flow chart, but it's like, okay, so if I need, blah, 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 I know Karen's the person to go to, even though on the org chart, she's got nothing to do with it. But she's got her tendrils. Or if I need information about this, then I know, and I can, have a chat with her about it. And they're really cool. And they're very inclusive people, right? They're always trying to bring more people into their network, and they're not excluding them. They're the ones that they're the ones you want to have lunch with, right? When you go down to the cafeteria.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll answer this two-part. I think being as somebody who has been part of workplace culture, but then also created workplace culture as an entrepreneur. So I feel like the people that actually navigate politics or who manage the workplace culture very well are people who walk a thin line between strength and warmth. So what I mean by that is, like, you're strong enough to deliver results, manage up, right? Manage expectations of your managers, of your customers, of people in your, that demand of you. But then you're also warm enough to still encourage people, regardless of their level in the organization, to encourage them to come forward to you, to actually trust you that if they're having, let's say, if they need a mental health day, they can actually come to you and say, I need it. They can trust you with that information. So you're empathetic enough, warm enough, approachable enough, but also firm and strong, and you deliver on the results, right? So people like that, it's easy to be trusted, but also people trust you not just personally, but they trust that you deliver the work that you say you're going to deliver. And people like that, people like to work with. But from a point of creating the culture, I think it's more around defining what is going to motivate the people that you work with. So personally, I had the opportunity to talk to about 11 people that I've worked with in the last year, just to understand what do they want at the end of, if they leave my organization, who do they want to be, and how can I help them grow and achieve those goals? So being able to work with them and actually help them every day of the time they work with me, I've noticed that actually through that, I'm creating a culture of openness, of empathy, of learning from each other. Ideas are open to, they can come to me with anything. So it's around creating it, but also being part of it and drawing that line between strength and warmth.
So there's so many different ways to answer this question. So Susan, I like that you talked about the career aspect of it, and Brenda, it's about the place that you live, right? Like it's your work life. So that culture there, I think those are both very important. So I'm going to maybe answer a little bit from both sides. In terms of navigating workplace culture for development, to be considered for opportunities, to get promoted, to be quite honest, that's kind of why we're here. Why do you want to self-promote? So you can get those better opportunities. For me, it's been over the span of a 20-year career, observation and just sort of understanding, like, oh, that person got promoted. I never would have expected that. Not that they're not capable, but they weren't really on the radar. And then you start to kind of pick through as to, okay, how did this person, what did they do well? How can I be inspired by this person? Not like this person didn't deserve it kind of thing, but like this person did something, was able to accomplish something that I hope to accomplish. What can I learn from their journey? What can inspire me from their journey? Is that something that makes sense? So when I was at Deloitte as well, there are people, like, there's the stuff they say you need to do in your job and then you get promoted, but then there's the things they don't say or the things they don't document about, like, how you actually get promoted. So it's not just about being technically very good at your job. So I was a senior consultant when I was there. So it's not just being a very good senior consultant, leading streams of work. You also had to be able to be part of delivering sales, like part of like putting together RFPs that sold, being part of they call it managed revenue. How about your relationship and the network that you have? And none of that is defined. And you have to have someone who knows that organization to be able to kind of take you through the behind the scenes. It's not quite politics, but it is politics a little bit. It's the relationships and the thing that it's the behind the scenes cultural and organization, so the culture of the organization that you need to understand and navigate so that you can navigate it well. Now, once you are more aware of it, you would then decide whether that end result, is it worth the effort, or do I want to put that effort to go towards that path, or is it not worth it? Like, where do I want to spend my energy? And I love my time at Deloitte. I loved it, and this is being recorded. So, I want to say that I really love my time at Deloitte. I learned a lot, but I also learned that to progress there, the focus on sales, at least at the time that I was there, the focus on sales, the focus on business development, the focus on actually closing deals was, if I was going to stay at Deloitte and progress, that would become more and more important. And so for me, I've worked in sales, but I don't enjoy the sales part of it. To me, once this contract is signed, the fun starts. Like the fun doesn't end when the contract is signed. And so if you're doing sales, that's why I've moved away from pure sales and pure business development. I like it because I like talking to people, but I don't want to be held to that. So for me, it was like, okay, well, in order to continue to grow my career here at this organization, these are things I need to do. Do I want to do those things? Does that end goal make it, worth it for me to, like, not worth it, but like, is that the work I want to put in to achieve that goal? So then you have to make that decision. And so, one organization, it might be acceptable. It'd be totally worth the work and worth the effort. And other places, it's not, right? So that ties to your answer, Brenda, about workplace culture and the culture of the organization and your leadership team and your management team. So if it's a place that's very, cutthroat, very, disorganized, like, I don't like organization. I don't like being disorganized. So if I'm working in an organization that's very disorganized and ad hoc, like, I know I would go crazy. So, and there's some like really big companies out there that everybody wants to work for, and I already know I don't have the right personality. So it's kind of knowing what that culture is. You can only be you. We talk about being your authentic self. You can only be you. So me as a manager, my management style, I want to be someone who's open. I want to be someone that is friendly, approachable, helpful. My team knows that, so I don't have any direct reports now. That's just not how our organization works. But when I did have direct reports, my directs, after we built some trust, like, they would come to me and ask me about career advice. And they would ask about, I want to apply to this job. I'm like, you should. It's like, they're like, but it's leaving your team. I'm like, if it's a better opportunity for you, go apply. Do you want some help with, like, practicing interview questions? Like, I want you to be the best that you can be. And if that opportunity is better for you, for your career, for your family, for wherever you are in life right now, if that's better than what I can offer you here, I want to help you get there, right? It's up to you. You might not take the job if you get it, but at least you have the choice. And I want you to have choices. And I'd like for you to choose me, but it's really important for you to have those choices. So if I can help set you up for that, that's good. And for me, that was really important to me. Not every organization is that open or that friendly. And then again, it's a choice whether you want to stay in that kind of place that doesn't align with who you are at your core self. So that was a very roundabout answer.
I agree. I think workplace culture is so critical. And I think as you navigate and even go into your first role, I think it's critical to even do your research, even contact people on LinkedIn that work at those organizations, just to learn a little bit more about that company culture, to see if that's a natural fit for you. I know that we're at time. There was so much more to talk about, but I wanted to thank all our panelists. Thank you so much. And the OSPI's Kingston Exchange Hub members who took the time to actually sit in on this session. Thank you again. And we hope to see you again soon.